saying that that while the World Bank has been working quite a bit on landscape restoration, we haven't really thought about it as environmental peace building. And yet there is a critical aspect to that. In terms of the World Bank's work on environmental peace building, 80% of our work is really in the pre-conflict sphere, in the fragility sphere. And a lot of it has to do with community-based landscape restoration, whether that be in the Sahel, whether that be ocean landscapes in sub-Saharan Africa and the South Pacific, whether landscape restoration means arid landscapes or whether it means heavily forested landscapes. And in this sense, Central Asia has really been a region that has been underserved with respect to regional cooperation of its own and kind of outside funding. And so this coherent aspect to have a regional approach in Central Asia on forest landscape restoration is really unique and needed in my estimation. The work of the bank in this regard has been based on what's called a regional risk and resilience assessment, which looks at the root causes of fragility. This is a intervention which really does span across climate change, political fragility at the community level, and takes an approach of really trying multiple interventions and interventions that are country specific. Something else that I like about the RESILAND approach is that there's a regional overlay of regional exchange and also a focus on transboundary issues. And those are two distinct things, obviously. And the transboundary issues in forest landscape restorations are really one where you have negative externalities of not focusing on the regional interfaces where, in fact, due to migration and other factors, it's often, and certainly in the case in Central Asia, the case that the transboundary areas and the frontiers are those which are the most heavily and rapidly deforested. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today. It is, again, a much needed way forward, one that has many actors, and certainly at the level of the global interventions that the World Bank does in regional landscape restoration. This intervention is rapidly coming to the fore as one of our biggest and most important. So with that, Serge, back to you.
Thank you very much for this bright opening remarks and for tapping already into the RESILAND project. With this, I would like to call upon Paola Agostini. She is the lead natural resource management specialist in the World Bank, to talk to us a bit more about the Central Asia Land Landscape Program and how it helps in the peacebuilding efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serge. And it's a perfect transition from the introduction of Tracy to giving you a little bit more background of what this resilient landscape or RESILAND project, what is it? So let me share a few slides and let me see, to put them in. Can you see them, Serge?
Yes, we can see.
Excellent. And can you see also me? I don't see myself, but.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So what is this RESILAND program? So let me just, for the people that are not from Central Asia, this is Central Asia. These are the countries in Central Asia. But, you know, in addition to the political map, I wanted to show to you the physical map. So to show that you have countries that are mountains on the very right, and the very, very big steppe, and the very big steppe with some desert area on the left. So just to help you to visualize the kind of landscape that we have. Why do we need a resilient landscape program that deals with fragility? Look, these are some of the issues of fragility and conflict in Central Asia. We don't have many violent conflicts normal in Central Asia, apart that we had these recent protests in Kazakhstan, but the region where we experience more violence is really in the border between Central Asia and Afghanistan. The instability in Afghanistan really spills over into Central Asia, and we do have now a lot of issues related to refugees. And here you have a little bit of you know, with all these points, a little bit of an idea of where these conflicts are. As you can see, these conflicts are along borders. And the tensions are really exacerbated by issues related to land degradation and climate change. So remember this map of the conflict area. And now let's go to a map of a land degradation area. And as you can see, land degradation is mainly concentrated again along borders. So there is an immediate, if you want, visual overlap without making any correlation between the land degradations induced also by climate change and by human factor and conflict and fragility. In addition, we did studies that the economic impact of land degradation only, we didn't try to evaluate the conflict, cost to the region at least 4% of GDP, at least. This is a very conservative estimate. So basically something needs to be done. How can we address this issue? So the World Bank, together with the Central Asia countries, started discussing the possibility of a resilient Central Asia Plus compact program, where the impact would be more than in Central Asia. By working in Central Asia countries, we hope also to address some fragility issues on the borders. And this will be done through looking at fragility issues, fragility of the people, resilience of the people, resilience of the ecosystem, and resilience of the infrastructures that connects the Central Asia countries. So this is the concept of the corridor, or working on transboundary corridor that spans between two or more countries. And they can be corridors that are related to a natural resource and ecosystem, shared watershed, or they can be road corridors, or they can be people corridors where people are along borders are moving. These are the kind of activities that we do. So it's really related to landscape restoration in trying to reverse or the land degradation that is there and give income opportunities to the people that are living in these fragile areas, giving more livelihood and income opportunities while also addressing natural resource management. And the idea is that by doing this program, we will have we will increase the resilience of infrastructure. We will increase the resilience of border communities. We will grow back greener. We'll increase agriculture productivities, have more mitigation and adaptation, and really create a vibrant economy, which is at the base of also reducing the fragility. And this will be done through individual projects in each country that are joined by some regional collaboration and regional activities. So with that, let me stop here, because I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the RESILAND program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paula, for the bright and smart presentation. I will urge our participants to take note their questions, and the different keynote speakers will respond to them in part 2. Without wasting much of our time, I would also like to invite the next speaker, who is the head of the International Relations and Eco-Tourism Department, State Committee of Forestry of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Abdul Zadelev, excuse me if I pronounce it wrongly, to talk to us more about the job. Thank you.
Abdulwakid, you're on mute. You're muted.
Oh, now it's okay. Thank you for giving chance to say about the resilient project. Good morning, dear colleagues. Can I share my presentation as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. In Uzbekistan, I can say this that this project is unique because such a project has never been implemented in the history of our country. This project envisages the forest landscape restoration in our country, as well as the creation of industrial plantations and integrated management and as well nature-based tourism activity in the project sites. At the same time, as a Central Asian countries, our forests also plays protective functions. Therefore, it's not easy to create sustainable forest management models in our country. But the resilient project aims to improve degraded forest lands and develop forest management with integrated approaches, as I mentioned it, with nature-based tourism. And this project will also support agricultural activities on the ground and supports water reservoirs as well. And the project area near to the neighbor countries, as in Zamin province and Surkhandarya province, Namangan and Samarkand provinces. In this picture, I am going to show the landscape which we are going to implement activities within this project. And here we are going to rehabilitate forest fund lands, and we are going to work and to implement such kind of activities which can support water reservoirs as well. And we are going to implement some kind of mechanisms which can stop soil erosion and we are going with these activities to stop degradation as well, degradation in that area as well. And with our project, we are going to support agricultural areas as well, because when we will plant trees on the hill of our mountain areas and around the water basins, we can keep soil on the ground, and the water reservoirs life also will be longer than usual. And so within this project, we are going to restore landscape restoration with tree plantations. This is a brief information which we are going to implement, and of course within this project we are going to improve recreation areas and nature-based tourism. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the details on the land restoration that we've done as part of the project. And I think this also will require education and community development. And by so doing, I'll be very happy to invite Sarah Menke, an educator and community development specialist, founder of Eco Head Schools, to talk to us more about their interventions within the RESILAND project.
Thank you very much, Serge. I'm going to share my screen. Very good. Thank you so much. We are so pleased to be here and a part of this conference and to share with you our pilot feasibility study that we engaged in partnership with the University of Central Asia. I'm sorry to say that Dr. Jarahani was not able to join us at the last minute, but I will carry on. This is really about how we are looking at what it might look like to activate rural schools across the RESILAND project to bring youth into the activities of resource rejuvenation. Just quickly about the Anchor Schools project, we really look at schools as community anchors. But these are assets in our communities that are often under-resourced and under-leveraged, and that we look to network these schools to other assets regionally, such as universities like the University of Central Asia, and build out, support the building of their social capital networks. And in that, really, it's about empowering youth through building out entrepreneurial leadership skills and solutions-based learning through place-based learning, and a peer-to-peer model, sort of bringing university students together with young people in rural communities to develop locally responsive, enduring solutions. And we take this model from other parts of the world, the Balkans, across the African continent, other places where we're seeing youth really activated to respond to local conditions and create solutions in the face of climate change. So very quickly, want to give you an overview of the study itself. So really, again, how can we activate rural schools in Central Asia so that they are centers of learning, collaborative action, and entrepreneurship to foster community and environmental resilience? Oops. As I mentioned, we partnered with the University of Central Asia that has a cooperative learning program that brought us 10 undergraduate interns, 5 young women, 5 young men between the ages of 19 to 24. We trained them virtually in human-centered design techniques. They developed a climate change lesson that they felt would address the learning needs of the young people they were going to be working with. They also developed a case study around a young person in Tajikistan, a University of Central Asia student who is doing work in activating, doing civic engagement around climate change as a way to inspire young people that they can make change in their communities. And they also planned out the village workshop. So this was youth to youth across the board. So here's our study area. We worked in the GBAO region of the Pamir Mountains in Tajikistan. The University of Central Asia Horag campus is in that area. We implemented 12 workshops. The interns implemented 12 workshops. 7 were in rural schools. In one community, we were not able to access the school, so it took place in a rural residence. 2 took place in Horag town itself, and we also took advantage of some of the youth interns and their connection to some summer camps that were happening in the region as well. We had, our goal was 100 youth. We ended up working with almost 300 through this process of connecting with these camps and the rural schools. We were very happy that the gender balance was there with 53% of female students. Most of our students, our target age range was between 13 and 16, and we were happy to have that many students there. Really our emphasis was not on increasing knowledge, specific content knowledge of climate change, but building an awareness of that change and understanding how this work of these young interns can increase knowledge and most importantly, a concern for climate change, as well as their sense of capacity and orientation to find solutions in their communities. We were, the actions, the program that the interns developed through our training really resulted in a high degree of interest and positive response from the youth. They clearly enjoyed their activities. But most importantly, they were able to identify the issues of concern for their communities. What were they seeing were most problematic, and how might they come up with responses to that? And again, this was a very first stage pilot. We did not get to the stage of actually activating any ventures around these solutions generated by the young people. But what we did see was that, of course, these students are paying attention. These young people see what's happening. They see the connections that are being made, that they can make the connections between the conditions of their landscape and the sources of those problems, as well as the potential for how those issues can be addressed. And the students really saw that they were able to, that they have capacity, that they have the potential to be a part of these solutions. So our really key takeaways are that rural schools are assets, oftentimes in some very remote areas, some of the only certainly built environments that are common to these communities, and they're often really untapped. As in many places, there are long stretches of time when the schools themselves are really not being used. How can we really activate that as an asset? How can we connect those schools and the young people who are attending those schools in these communities with regional assets such as NGOs and universities to help create an ecosystem for this youth entrepreneurship? and also trying to understand what the gaps are that these young people have across, in this case, Tajikistan. And we really were reinforced that, as we have experienced in other parts of the world, that of course young people have such incredible power to be catalysts and agents of change in their own communities. And that we'd like to see that such initiatives are integrated into education. And in the case of Tajikistan, the Ministry of Education has committed to a long-term 10-year plan to better integrate and advance climate change awareness and environmental awareness learning in schools through high school. So we're really excited about that possibility, and how can we build on that learning that's going to be happening in the classroom, and how can we take it beyond the classroom as well. So really, ultimately, what we want to see is ecosystems that empower youth and a regional network of initiatives. The University of Central Asia has 3 campuses, and they have some activities in Afghanistan as well. And if we take this pilot initiative and we replicate it, we expand it, then we replicate it to other countries where the University of Central Asia has campuses, as well as other schools. There are schools of forestry. There are a number of different higher ed organizations. We train up young college students to be facilitators in rural communities. Again, leveraging the school resources in these communities, connecting to NGOs of different sorts around the region and they're really critical. The NGOs have the on-the-ground connections. They have that social capital and the connections. They have the local knowledge that can support young people to take that idea around whether it's what to do with trash and garbage in their community that's accumulating because there aren't services to take that sort of away and deal with that, or something around the implications of flooding in their community. What is it that these NGOs and these universities and these young people can, this whole network, this ecosystem, do to address these issues and give young people, the next generation of leaders in the region, this a sense of agency. So this is the inputs really, again, were these university students and these rural youth. Our outcomes were increased awareness and these initial prototypes, these ideas that we see could have so much potential. And ultimately, this impact is contributing to this broader picture of resilient landscapes, a sense of youth agency and inclusion, and as well as we're discussing today, this opportunity ultimately for there being this greater youth collaboration across borders, both at the level of university students and ultimately young people who can share it, perhaps if not in person, they can certainly, there are many ways now that young people can be sharing across border and taking advantage of the university network to do that, which ultimately, when young people get to know each other across borders, that's certainly a contribution to peace building. Thank you very much. And I will pass it back to Serge.
Thank you so much for this enlightening presentation. I believe the future for peace building through environment starts with the youth and their education globally is a key factor for us to see the change we all desire. And with that, we also notice that ICT plays an important role in dissemination of information and sharing information. And by so doing, I'll be very happy to invite Guan Swangu, who is who works in the ICT management and facilities division of the Korea Forest Service, to talk to us more about their work. Thank you.
Okay, upload my presentation, please. Sophia, could you upload my presentation?
Oh, Sango, do you want us to load your presentation?
I want
Or
to.
can you load it?
Okay, I can upload my presentation.
Yes,
Later?
thank
Yeah,
you.
okay, yeah.
Sergio, can you introduce Sango in the meantime?
I'm sorry. Mhm. Okay, do you see the presentation?
We can see your screen and
Okay, yeah.
almost
Okay,
it's
let
not
me.
yet opened.
Okay, my start my presentation. Hi, my name is Byun Sang-woo from the ICT Management and Statistics Division of Korea Forest Service. I'm so glad to meet you all online. This presentation consists of 3 parts.
Sango, sorry, the presentation is not opened yet. Did you click on it?
Oh, I open. Oh, I
We can.
I upload the presentation. Do you see the presentation?
We only see your screen, at least me. Serge, do you see only the screen?
Yes,
Oh
see
yeah,
on
I
the
shared my screen. Sophia?
Maybe you
Oh.
should share the screen with the presentation. Try to share it in.
Okay, I'm sorry. I try to again.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No problem. You will. It always takes a minute.
Do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. You can
Okay.
see it very well and we can hear you.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you. Yeah. The first order is about Peace Forest Initiative. In this part, I will talk about how Republic of Korea successfully completed reforestation from naked land and international cooperation of the KFS. In Korea, after the Korean War from 1950 to 1953, the entire country was devastated. However, people tried hard and was listed the 7th country in the 30-50 Club in 2018. 30-15 Club refer to cases whether the population is more than 50 millions and the national income per capita is more than $30,000. The picture below shows Korean people enjoying camping on the riverside of Han River. The picture above shows the devastated country right after the Korean War. After the picture you see below show Korea people planting tree to the barren land. People participated in reforestation process was not a forest specialist or certain organization, but ordinary people. How was it possible? It can be summarized into 4 things. First, it's a strong leadership. The strong leadership greening the country made people follow. The second was to establish the dedicated organization. The KFS was established in 1967 with independent authority and budget from a small department of administration. Third, there was voluntary participation and interest among the whole nation. Fourth, with the economic growth, people used less and less of fuel wood and replaced it with energy source that does not cause deforestation. The table shows the change in the forest growing stock from 1990 to 2015. This was possible through continuous management and sustainable management activities by minimizing damage to forest disaster since reforestation. As the forest revived, activities such as forest product cultivation became active. In addition, we combine welfare service with peaceful forest. When a child is born, he or she can experience prenatal care in the forest kindergarten, and engage in forest sports activities as he or she grows up. The KFS is strengthening bilateral and multilateral cooperation through various channels based on expertise from successful reforestation. The KFS is strengthening, and PFI is a good policy program that builds trust between countries and promote peace by restoring devastated forest and land in the border region together. The PFI is included in the decision of the UNCCD and the New Delhi Declaration and was reflected in the joint chairman statement of ASEAN-Korea Special Summit. These main things, Area 1, creating an environment for cooperation in land and forest. Area 2, sustainable management and restoration of devastated land and forest. Area 3, providing ecosystem services through sustainable management and restoration of natural resources. Now move on the forest management through ICT in Korea. Forests play a very important role globally. It is from the perspective of the environmental crisis. Global environmental destruction is underway due to climate change, desertification, and fossil fuel use. In order to effectively respond to this, forests, the only source of carbon absorption, is used. Problems such as urbanization and aging due to population growth can also be solved by forests. Forests take a long time to cultivate once. It takes more than 50 or 100 years to make a past forest. On the other hand, forests are vulnerable to climate change. Wildfire in the United States and Australia had caused tremendous damage last year. In order to effectively manage forests, it is necessary to establish a sustainable forest management system using the latest information communication technology. Forest resource management system support people who work in the forest. They get some information such as survey, planning, seeding, and evaluation. It helps people to collaborate with the local government and forestry companies. Forest officers have to deal with both paperwork and the field duty to conduct field survey and supervise the implementation of forest field project. For field survey, officials need to carry map, survey forms, camera, measuring tool into forest. To solve this problem, we developed a mobile tablet system. Recently, drones are used in a wide range of sectors. Images filmed by drones are auto-processed into orthographic image and panorama image. Then those images are used to remotely manage forest project site, checking forest fire affected area, monitoring disease affected trees, managing degraded area, and so on. Also, KFS implements a variety of ODA project. One of the project support plantation activities in desert in Mongolia. Basically, forest disasters are managed through 3 stages: prevention, action, and recovery. Forest disaster information based on geographic information system. Depending on the severity, damage, and impact, the system also send out alarms to public about the situation. As forest fire are getting larger, we pay special attention to the protection of residents in the forest. Control tower take countermeasures against wildfire. The KFS use forest fire extinguisher system in the forest. The forest firefighter extinguish and monitor spreading of wildfire on the ground. The vehicle supports the forest firefighters. In the air, helicopter extinguish fire as they drop down the water. The direction of the red dot in line on the screen is the direction of the spread of forest fires, sharing information on the spread of forest fire among related organizations. Okay, the 3 main pillars of forest management and planning, execution, and evaluation. The Forest Resource Management Platform provides ICT-based services like data collection, monitoring, and statistics. Peaceful forests can be managed more efficiently through forest digitalization. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for the interesting highlights of the importance of ICT in the forest monitoring. And I also think with this information, transboundary conservation becomes important. And I'll also be very happy to invite Boris Ek, who is the IUCN Regional Office for Eastern Europe and Central Asia Director, to talk to us more about transboundary conservation. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, just unmuting myself. Thanks, Serge, and good morning, afternoon, evening to all. A great pleasure being here. Switching to full screen. Just let me know if everything works fine with my screen sharing. Yeah. Then once again, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the invite. It's real pleasure being here on this roundtable. and also contributing with a piece on transboundary conservation, as being mentioned several times already today and yesterday during the plenary session, and will be discussed over the course of the conference. I think the previous speakers and Paul in particular gave a very nice segue to what the presentation will be about, and what transboundary conservation does for peace building and community resilience, conservation, conflict resolution, and so it has many facets. So first, just a few words on where this presentation in a way comes from. It's part of IUCN's work, and IUCN is a big organization. It includes member organizations and commission experts, and so. And transboundary conservation as such sits with one of the 6 expert commissions. That's the World Commission on Protected Areas. Within there is a specialist group on transboundary conservation. So that's where this work on transboundary conservation comes from, and that's where most of the knowledge stems from. This said, transboundary conservation as such is not just about protected areas, certainly. So it has so many dimensions, and it speaks to so many issues that are being discussed and that are being challenging us. I'm very pleased to say also, I saw that on the participant list we have a Kevin Zunkel and Maya Vasilievich. They are chair and co-chair of the specialist group. So I'm very pleased to see that they are in audience. So let me just go a little bit back in time and just to reinforce the notion of transboundary conservation and peace building by sharing a bit more information on the history of transboundary cooperation and some of the first peace parks that have been established, the transboundary parks for peace, brings us back to, well, a bit less than 1 century back, when the Waterton Glacier International Peace Park was established in 1932, and Pianini Mountains Bilateral Nature Park. Those areas they were established in a way to reinforce peace, yeah, and reconcile after conflicts and celebrate peace in a way. So this just speaks to the fact of the importance of transboundary conservation, transboundary areas in promoting peace and partnership. To date, and this is part of the Transboundary Conservation Guideline that was presented at the World Parks Congress in 2014, finally published 2015. The specialist group, the team of experts that we came up with few key definitions on transboundary protected areas and few different types of transboundary protected or conserved areas. So I won't go into every detail, just for you to understand that there are different types of designs on the ground and different types of areas that can be combined in transboundary protected or transboundary conserved areas. But what matters here is that we really we looked into and discussed in depth the parks for peace or peace parks idea, and realized that shouldn't be a standalone, like, type of a protected area or transboundary protected area, but it's actually something that cuts across different ways of how we exercise, how we do transboundary conservation. So peace park, the idea of peace park, a vision along those lines can be promoted in many different types and ways of transboundary work. So that's very important that we felt that peace parks, they speak for all sorts of transboundary conservation. So some basics on what transboundary conservation is and what kind of challenges it implies. We all know that it's not an easy endeavor, not an easy task, as there could be a political differences, there can be a differences in resources and human resources, financial resources, different types of standards, jurisdictions, legal frameworks. What we see on the picture is a border fence, so it's a very hard border line that makes it more difficult for transboundary cooperation, for species migration, for a joint land management, and so we all know that there are quite a few challenges with transboundary conservation, and therefore our support as an organization and many other organizations that are doing and providing support to establishing transboundary conservation, rolling it out and bring it to a fruition. But then in the same time, there are lots of benefits. It's just the numerous benefits that transboundary conservation it brings that can be spanning economic and political and cultural exchange of data, joint management of either protected areas or simply land, providing economic benefits, and so there's multiple benefits that transboundary conservation, if well conceived, established, and implemented, can bring. This publication here is just one effort that we made a few years back, where we reviewed the potential for World Heritage in Central Asia. And we realized the result of it, the study is actually that there are quite a few either transnational or transboundary, the very transboundary area that span national borders that can be promoted as World Heritage sites, which just prompts the need for cooperation across boundaries in Central Asia. The knowledge base on transboundary conservation is vast. Including some of the IUCN's volumes, but also, for example, this one published by the Convention on Migratory Species on potential transboundary corridors for species in Central Asia, and there is more than that. We tried really to support transboundary conservation practitioners and those interested in transboundary conservation, and published with support of the German Federal Agency for Nature Conservation. We published a training module that is accessible online through this link, which includes a few modules on how to initiate, how to kickstart a transboundary conservation initiative. So I invite you to download the material and go through. And of course, if you're interested, you can reach out to any of the authors and then inquire further how that training module works. So that's something, for example, that we're thinking into translating in other languages and then applying in as many regions as possible. So then just zooming it and in closing, zooming in to Central Asia, there is a vast potential for transboundary cooperation. I'm really happy to see projects like RESILAND at regional and national level that are really specifically looking into some transboundary issues, be it through land management, through restoration, through conservation. And so there are quite a few efforts at the moment in Central Asia that speak to and that support a transboundary cooperation. I have to say that the political landscape in Central Asia have changed over the past years, and that there is a much more potential for transboundary cooperation, regional cooperation, and transboundary cooperation. We at IUCN, we are also having a number of efforts. For example, Western Tianshan is one of the areas, but we are also supporting other partners and communities in promoting transboundary cooperation. From, for example, as you can see, this down left, this picture from the Astana conference in 2018, when we promoted the ECA 30, the forest landscape restoration initiatives that are really getting to speed now, as we see that through joint land restoration projects. The RLC BAD is certainly a flagship initiative in Central Asia, but also supporting the very local communities, as we saw from Paula's presentation, that quite often a rural poor and land degradation in transboundary areas coincide. So really should look really into what the communities are and what the areas are, and then try to support. Last but not least, certainly species migration is an important. I mean, Central Asia is one of the most important sites and regions, if you wish, when it comes to transboundary movement of species worldwide. Yet there are quite a few obstacles there, be it linear infrastructure, be it border fences. So really should look into how to support a species migration that can then lead also to community resilience and improved land management. The Green List of Protected and Conserved Areas is one of the flagship tools that IUCN is promoting in going beyond just protected areas, but looking into other areas that can be managed for both a community and biodiversity benefits. And I'll stop here from this nice picture from one of the most important, I would say, borderlands in terms of transboundary conservation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for Doris for clearing us more on this. We are now through with presentation from our panels speakers. We would like to invite Sophia to the panel discussion, question and answer session. Sophia, over to you.
Thank you, Serge, and thank you so much to our panel for sharing your expertise and experience in building stronger and more resilient landscapes and communities in Central Asia. I'm Sophia, a natural resource management consultant with the World Bank, and for the past 8 months, I've been working with Paula on RESILAND, and I will now be leading the question and answer portion of this session, starting with targeted sessions for each of our panelists, and then opening the floor to Q&A from the audience. So if inspiration strikes you during this Q&A period, feel free to write your question in the chat or wait until it's over and you can use the raise your hand function. Since we ended with Boris, we're going to start with you on a question on transboundary cooperation. So you spoke about different forms of transboundary conservation. And I'm hoping you can tell us a bit more about how we can scale up these restoration and sustainable land management efforts in Central Asia to achieve environmental peace building. Boris, the floor is yours.
Certainly, thanks a lot for this question. It's very relevant and builds on my presentation. I really try to make a point on the importance of transboundary conservation, and one of the flagship publications, or in a way a seminal publication on transboundary in IUCN, was a 2001 piece on transboundary conservation and peace. Yeah. So it was 20 years back when we started really looking. Actually, it stems from a series of workshops in the 90s. So it's more than 20 years that the IUCN has been really considering transboundary conservation, and the focus was and still is to a great deal on protected areas. But as we see today, protected areas themselves are not what they've been like 20 years back. Now we speak about protected and conserved areas, and IUCN's team today is protected and conserved areas team. We speak about other area-based conservation measures, OSEM. So really look beyond just a traditional protected areas that are gazetted, the geographies that serve biodiversity conservation. So area-based management is to also to do for the communities to improve ecosystem services, resilience, disaster risk reduction, and so on. So there are many facets that we can look into cooperation across boundaries, you know. And the more of these elements, the more of these threats, the more relevant transboundary cooperation is. Yeah? So the way how we can scale it up certainly is to work at all levels. I know that it sounds as cliche, but it really is. I mentioned this improved regional cooperation, so the sort of the political landscape in the region. So it's much more a goodwill for cooperation, and that sets the stage for rolling out, implementing more like, you know, site-based initiative. International organizations are more attentive to both regional and transboundary cooperation in Central Asia, RESILAND being one of them, IUCN, quite a few organizations, CMS and FFI and so on, just to name a few. So there is a lot of support that can come also from international organizations. And then last not least, certainly, is that we should tailor our effort. You know, so we will not be able to make an impact if we are not looking into specific communities, if you're not looking into specific landscape, if we're not understanding what issues are there and how can we resolve them. And I'm really happy to see RESILAND, for example, really zooming in into very specific landscapes and communities and problems, and then addressing issues such as species conservation, or a water security, food security, land degradation, and so on and so on. So I would say that combining local, national, international effort, and then doing that at kind of, having that regional framing is a way forward.
Thank you so much, Boris. That's actually a perfect segue, I think, into what Sang-woo was talking about with disaster risk management as being a key part of peace building and really working hard to build stronger and more resilient landscapes and communities. Sang-woo, could you tell us how effective information technology is in forest management, and if forest management and disaster response can be applied to Central Asia to reduce fragility? Sang-woo?
I'm sorry, I'm mute. Okay.
Oh,
Various problems are occurring due to climate change. In the event of wildfire, initial forest fire suppression can be carried out quickly, depending on how quickly the site location is identified and responded. In the past, it was not easy to communicate between the center and the site, even if the location of the forest fire was explained through telephone contact. However, rapid information sharing through the information system can make a decision quickly, and the field can respond systematically. Also, there is no need to explain over the phone. For example, when forest fire occur in spring in Korea, when the wind is strong and dry, forest fire quickly spread around. The forest fire, which started at a small point, became gradually expanded through the surface on the forest. In particular, the direction of the spread of forest fire is related to wind speed, and the degree of denser forest at site also affects the spread of forest fire. Pine trees are more vulnerable to fire and tend to burn faster. However, we human efforts, if we can be known the forest time map and wind direction of the site, the direction of the spread of forest fire can be predicted, and the situation of the site can be shared among related organizations. Therefore, we can effectively operate through the information system resources such as field firefighters and helicopter to quickly extinguish forest fires. In addition, it can be effectively used for rapid evacuation guidance in villages near forest fires. Okay.
perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Want to switch gears here a bit and move to education, how education is contributing to all of this great work. And Sarah, you spoke about core to your model is peer-to-peer facilitation of place-based learning. And I'm hoping you could tell us in what ways you see youth-centered pedagogies, such as this, contributing to the bigger question of environmental peace building. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sophia. Yes, I think we can look to the really global youth climate awareness and action movement for really powerful examples of why youth need to be involved in these initiatives. And we just look at a young person like Vanessa Nakate from Uganda and the work that she's doing to know that youth are really essential in pushing forward these issues, both globally, but also locally. And so how do we activate young people to take initiative and lean into the solutions to the problems that they're experiencing every day. And we really see that this opportunity really rests in a student-centered approach to learning. And that learning can happen, as I've mentioned, in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom and in a place-based context. And what that does, it really generates what's core to this and a sense of agency is a sense of purpose. That when young people have a sense of purpose, then their their learning, I mean, there's great research coming out about how a sense of purpose can actually improve a student's ability to learn in that moment. And the peer-to-peer model really is a way of modeling for young people the possibilities that they have in front of them. And when we connect them to young people who are just a bit older than they are and they have a bit more experience, they can see the possibilities and they can see how they can take their work further. And it's really about authentic learning grounded in local realities. So that's there are so many different types of pedagogies that can be implemented that generally people refer to as place-based learning, project-based learning. And it's really all about developing that student-centered approach and really generating local funds of knowledge. There was a comment about connecting to local sources of knowledge and really that place-based approach, that's what you get. So young people can be in their communities. They can be finding sources of knowledge to inspire and to learn from and to find new ways of thinking about connecting new ways with traditional ways of responding to landscape degradation concerns. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And Abdulbakid, I'm hoping now you can chime in here and tell us more about specifically how Uzbekistan is working on these issues by collaborating with neighboring countries on landscape restoration. Thanks.
Thank you. Uzbekistan are working very closely with neighbor countries, especially with Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. And last year we had the opportunity to sign a roadmap with Kazakhstan, which were already working in the dried bottom of the Aral Sea. Now we are moving to Kazakhstan side with reforestation activities, and they are coming to us. And we are hoping to see each other in the border to shake hands. And opportunities for the cooperation in the forest landscape restorations and the resilient project also very wide. And as you know, water scarcity is significant and expected to increase by 45% by 2030, affecting urban supply if unattended due to increased transboundary usage and climate change. And this our project also aiming to preserve water resources as well with our planted trees, and to help soil erosion with plantations. And another causes we had last year in November, the situation with sand and dust storms in Tashkent. this cause showed how important regional cooperation in restoring degraded lands. And last year also we had a number of mountain forest fires, and this cause also increased. This is also requires the immediate development of cooperation with neighboring countries in this area, because in the future, if we haven't any cooperation in this sphere, it would be more difficult to manage forest fires in that area. And the pest control also the same situation. Therefore, we are going to strengthen our collaboration with neighbor countries. And at the same time, we should cooperation on the preserve biodiversity and organize animal migration as well. So in this sphere, we have a high intention to strengthen our cooperation with neighbor countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've spoken a lot about why all of this collaboration is important. Paula, could you jump in here and add to what Abdulwakid was saying and tell us more about why regional collaboration is important and what the role of civic society is to build peace and resilience in Central Asia?
Thank you, Sophia, and thank you to everybody. I think we're really hitting the most important point. And the examples that Abdulwakid just gave of why, from the ecosystem point of view, it's very important to do, ecosystem no boundaries, right? So there is no borders for them. They share the same watershed. So that's why that's very important from the ecosystem. But here it's, I also want to mention how important it is from the fragility aspects, because as we have seen, there are most of the conflict and most of the fragility is along borders. And so establishing a cooperation and working on both sides of the borders in really trying to make this, the people that live there and live livelihood of these people more resilient, it's a big step towards the really making, decreasing the fragility in these areas. And there are a lot of studies done also by the World Bank, how this is really very important in the borders of this region in Central Asia. And the role of civil society, I think it's, as we have seen from the presentation of Sarah, is actually fundamental, because some of these areas are not really the only organization that can work well there, are civic society organizations and NGOs, university, academia. And by empowering the youth, by empowering the local civic society, I think that we have a much better, probability of success. So I think this really are some of the keys of why we designed the RESILAND program as we design, and looking at corridors on each side of the borders and try to bring them together for the famous handshake that Abdulwakid mentioned, and that is a symbolic. And I hope that all the youth will be shaking hands at this border. Thank you, Sophia.
Thanks, Paula. I'm hoping for that handshake too. And with that, I would like to end with Tracy to give us a bit of inspiration for the future of environmental peace building. Given your global experience, Tracy, on environment and peace, do you have a success story you can share with us on improving natural resource management for reducing conflicts? Tracy?
Okay, there, I was having trouble unmuting myself. So this, it's always tough to define successes, but I do think that we have had successes along what we call the Great Green Wall in the Sahel, which stretches all the way from Senegal and Mauritania to the Horn of Africa. And it matters how you define success. But what I would think is, especially in the Sahel countries of Mali, Niger, Chad, Burkina at this point, even though there's been an increase in political instability, local landscape restoration and livelihood based activities rooted in natural resource management have helped communities maintain a stable local presence in the face of extremism and have helped them cope with changing circumstances. And I think that's really important. From the outside, it seems as though these communities themselves are engaged in the extremism. The truth of the matter is they aren't. It's mostly pastoralists or nomads, and these communities are really fighting to maintain normalcy. And so it is the kind of hyper local efforts at working with communities on managing their scarce natural resources that has provided stability to the extent that we have it in the Sahel and West Africa. Back to you, Sophia.
Thanks, Tracy. That was a great way to end this portion of the panel. And we are now going to open the floor to questions and answers from the audience. It seems like we have a few from the chat, so I'll just start with a couple from there. I see we also have someone raising their hand. I will start first with one question from the chat, and then we'll get to you, Stephanie, with your hand raised. So this question was for Paula. Could you explain how RESILAND is building on traditional ecological knowledge to design the interventions in a region where many different nomadic groups and cultures coexist?
Thank you very much. And I'll take advantage in the answer to both questions that I saw on the chat. So, and I ask also for help from Abdulwakid. So the traditional knowledge, it's extremely important. And the way we are designing it at the moment, as you know, for example, Central Asia is the center, one of the center of excellence for agrobiodiversity, one of the hotspots of agrobiodiversity. In fact, all the fruit that we eat, most of them comes from Central Asia. So we're not going to plant, how do you call them, exogenous trees and to do only plantations with things that come from other parts of the world. But really the way we are building the program is to build on the traditional trees that are such an important part of the culture and that are so important even for the world. So we definitely want to build on that, at least in terms of the choosing of the trees. We also have elements of traditional medicine. For example, a lot of herbal medicine is going to be a way to restore degraded lands using traditional knowledge. We can maybe do it more, bring it more. I think it's a very important point, and I will ask to Abdulwakid to see if he wants to say a few words about that. But before I pass the microphone, let me also mention, somebody asked how, the size of the project, as with loan and with grants. You are right, I forgot to put a slide on that. So the program is quite big. The biggest project is in Uzbekistan, is 150 million, of which 11 millions are grants and the rest are loans. And the grants come from ProGreen and from the Korea Partnership Trust Fund. The Tajikistan is 45 million, and Tajikistan is just been negotiated and will go to the board in February, while Uzbekistan will be negotiated in February and go to the board for approval in March. So Tajikistan is 45 million. It's IDA grants. Kyrgyzstan is starting the preparation. It's going to be $45 million as well, and it's IDA loan. We are trying to see if we find some grant money to accompany it, but we don't have it yet. And in Kazakhstan, the project is actually the only one under implementation. It's very small. It's a GF project of 6 million plus 2 additional million for ProGreen. It's very small for the size of Kazakhstan, but it's just that Kazakhstan does not have IDA. And this program benefits a lot from something the World Bank calls regional IDA. So if the countries get together and address together regional issues, they get a bonus of some additional funding from the regional IDA window of the World Bank. We had Afghanistan lined up for a very nice IDA grant project, but of course at the moment things have stopped in terms of preparation. But we hope that through all this regional work, they can somehow benefit and be involved, at least in the training that we will do, or in some conferences that we'll do via Zoom. We have a regional organization that is present here today in this event, CAREC, that will be working with us to ensure this regional collaboration and these regional aspects will work smoothly among all the countries. So we will work very closely with CAREC. So I'm very happy they're here. Thank you. So, Abdulwakil, over to you.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you. Yes. Within this project, we are going to implement our best practices, traditional best practices as well. In Uzbekistan case, we have a pistachio forest areas, and we are going to rehabilitate that areas and to improve pistachio plantations, and we are going to increase harvests of that plantations, because already we tested to increase harvest of pistachio with pruning trees, and therefore within this project we are aiming to do this kind of activities on the 3,000 hectares. This is the one as a traditional practice which we are going to apply within this project. The next one is the planting medical herbs, and already 5 years we are working on plantation of medical herbs in Uzbekistan, and most medical herbs we are going to plant in agroforestry areas, and we are going to plant between the rows of the created plantations. And other as a traditional practice in the mountain areas, this is to plant fruit trees and apple orchards. So this is our plan for the implementation of this project as a traditional practice.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Abdülbakir. Thank you so much. We're going to get to one last question. I want to be mindful of time and we're running out of it. But we'll get to this one last question and then close this session. If you have a question that we didn't get to in the 2-pager, I'll be including email addresses that you can reach out after. Thanks. Stephanie.
Yes, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you to the presenters and also to Sophia for doing such a great job at managing this panel. I was super happy to hear that there are a lot of synergies with some of the work that we do at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, in particular when it comes to Sarah's and Paola's work. And so my question is actually targeted at Sarah and the specifics of the educational exchange, I guess. So you chose 10 people, 10 students from the region, and they then kind of acted as multipliers in a way, right? They did presentations. Did that involve any production of educational materials? Because this is something that we're also looking into for this year, and I'd be happy to reach out and hopefully we can find some synergies. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Yes, so the University of Central Asia in Horik in Tajikistan has a cooperative program for students. So they have paid internships as a part of their program. So our initiative became an opportunity for students, and so the university hired 10 undergraduate students, all from the Earth and Environmental Sciences department, to be interns with the Anchor Schools RESILAND project. And they then went through a virtual training with us. And through that training, we were modeling the way that we would have them then take their work to the communities, the rural villages. The idea was that we would identify students who are from the area, so they would have local knowledge, they would have local connections, and know the schools, know the communities, and then have them generate, based on their knowledge, generate content that they felt would be supportive of the young people's learning, so that there would be some, at least a starting place for them around their knowledge of climate change and those systems that are then creating the dynamics that they're experiencing every day in their communities. And so they did create, the students generated a climate change lesson. And as I mentioned, they also generated a sort of case study for climate action, a youth action case study, so that they could envision themselves, in a sense, in this sort of role of activist and someone who could make change in their own community in different ways. And so that was really the structure. And we had initially thought that each of these individual students from the university would go independently to, or perhaps in pairs, to different communities. But it was determined for a number of reasons, in particular, just travel logistics. There were some roads that ended up being impassable due to floods, so which was also an important lesson in that moment for the university students. But other reasons, we broke the team into 3 teams, and each team had an adult from the university or from a local NGO, and then they delivered these one-day workshops to the youth, and then at the very last day, they had a village that was quite far, so they all went together, and that way they were able to sort of take their collective learning to that sort of last space and really sort of reflect on what was working and what needed to be improved. And so we are now in the process of refining all of that, and really kind of the piece that I think is really key to this is that while we're creating a replicable model and a replicable training, the content that would be generated would be important for sort of any team of university students to really be creating content themselves. So that's an important part that they are taking their own knowledge and creating learning experiences for then young people so that it is immediately relevant. So what's going to be immediately relevant for young people in Tajikistan is going to be similar, but perhaps not exactly the same as in Kyrgyzstan, for instance, in different areas in rural versus urban, et cetera. So so that's I hope that answered your question. I would love to connect. Absolutely.
Thank you so much again to all of our wonderful panelists for sharing all the work that you do. I think we can speak for everyone when we say the future is looking more resilient after hearing all of your wonderful work. And thank you again, especially to the Korean Forest Service. The work that everyone here is doing will be so much easier with the ICT platform. And with that, I'd love to close this session. And again, if you would like to reach out to anyone specifically in the document that I included in the chat, you can find email addresses and longer bios. So with that, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day, morning, whatever time zone you're in.
Thank you. Thank you to you and Serge.
Thank you.